Hi, I'm Jeff Richards. Welcome to Japan Today Spotlight, where we go deeper into the headlines you know and some you might have missed. Immigrants are taking our jobs. Too many tourists don't respect local customs. Foreigners are buying real estate, forcing prices up, and the crime they bring. Does this sound familiar? No, it is not the United States or Europe, but right here in Japan. Right-wing political parties are attracting attention in the lead-up to the July 20th upper house election, and it's a strategy as old as politics itself. When things aren't going well, find someone to blame and stir up the masses with hate speech. In this week's edition of Japan Today Spotlight, we'll look at the rise of right-wing parties and how they are attracting support, what their actual policies are, and how they are likely to do in Japan's upcoming election. This isn't just another video about fringe politics. It's about how fear spreads, who gets blamed, and what happens when that blame becomes policy. Two parties in particular have been vocal in their xenophobic attitudes toward foreign residents and to tourists. And while there are at least 8 parties campaigning in this upcoming election, Sanseito Party, the party of do-it-yourself, with its Japanese First slogan, and the Conservative Party of Japan are the ones making the most noise. Sanseito was established on YouTube during the pandemic in 2020 by Sohei Kamiya, 47. Though often described as far-right, many analysts and former members have raised alarm over the party's cult-like behavior and its spiritual nationalist rhetoric. The group's origins blend conspiracy theories, spiritual healing, and political activism, a combination that has drawn comparisons to Japan's history of political cults. Sanseito has reportedly been active in various prefectures, with some critics alleging that local education facilities they've opened are being used to promote the party's ideology. Sanseito does have an English website which outlines its manifesto on everything from anti-immigration to indoctrinating children. Now, we'll leave a link to those sites in the show notes below if you want to check them out. The party has been polling ahead of many established opposition parties in the run-up to this election. It rose quickly by tapping into economic frustration and national anxiety. Sanseito won 3 seats in last October's lower house election and 3 seats in the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly election last month. Kamiya has set a target of winning 6 seats in the 248-seat upper house election. Sanseito calls for the preservation of traditional Japanese culture, the revival of the true Japanese spirit, anti-globalization, and agricultural self-sufficiency. They also oppose vaccines, LGBT rights, immigration, and nuclear power. They pledge to limit the number of foreigners in Japan, including specified skilled workers and tourists, and cap the proportion of foreign residents at 5% of the population in each municipality. As of 2024, that proportion nationwide is about 3%, with 3.77 million foreign residents currently living in Japan. The party also pledges to make it more difficult for foreign nationals to obtain permanent residence. None of this, by the way, is against the law, since the rights of foreign-born people are not mentioned anywhere in the Japanese Constitution. The Conservative Party of Japan, or the CPJ, not to be confused with the Constitutional Democratic Party, the CPJ is a new right-wing party, and its leader, Naoki Hyakuta, a 69-year-old former TV commentator, gave a fiery speech on July 5th in which he said that foreign workers disrespect Japanese culture, ignore the rules, and assault Japanese people and steal from them. Hyakuta himself is no stranger to controversy. A former NHK board member, he is known for denying the Nanjing massacre and promoting revisionist history. Established in 2023, his party won 3 seats in last year's lower house election. Hyakuta advocates stricter immigration and refugee policies to protect the Japanese people and the country's culture. One thing these two parties and a few fringe groups have in common is their view that there are too many immigrants who take jobs away from Japanese. They say they don't assimilate into communities where they live, and wealthy foreigners buy land, driving up real estate prices out of the reach of Japanese people. Let's take a closer look at these claims. Japan's immigration policy has always been ambiguous. The basic policy has been to accept only foreign workers who will eventually return to their home country after a few years in Japan. In 2019, Japan added specified skills to the types of resident status for foreigners in Japan and began accepting foreign workers in industries facing labor shortages. Industries such as factories, manufacturing plants, farms, nursing care, and convenience stores. In June 2024, a revised related law, which established an employment system to accept and train unskilled foreign workers, was enacted. By the end of 2024, the number of foreign residents in Japan reached a record high of over 3.76 million. Japan's National Institution of Population and Social Security Research has issued a projection that by 2070, the percentage of non-citizens residing in Japan will be 10.8% of the overall population. Kamiya complains that if Japan takes in more and more foreigners for cheap labor, then Japanese people's wages won't rise. As for population growth, he says that if Japan wants to stem the falling birth rate, immigrants are not the answer. Japan needs to create a society where young women feel they want to have children. But are immigrants really taking jobs away from Japanese workers? Akinori Tomohara, a professor at the School of International Politics of Aoyama Gakuen University, says the current policy of accepting foreign workers in industries where there's a labor shortage is not a threat, because these are fields where Japanese people are not particularly keen to work. Let's talk about crime. A survey conducted by the Cabinet Office in 2021 showed that about 25% of respondents expressed fear of crime by foreigners. Unease is growing, especially in prefectures where large numbers of trainee workers from countries such as Vietnam, Myanmar, and Indonesia live and work. A 46-year-old housewife from Nishinomiya in Hyogo Prefecture, who supports the CPJ, started watching YouTube videos featuring Hyakuta. In an interview with Japanese media, she said his words about foreigners living in Japan hit home. She said she is afraid when she sees foreigners hanging out in the local park, especially at night. Asked about coexistence, she said the quantity and quality of foreigners in Japan should be guaranteed. Otherwise, their presence will change the culture and atmosphere of the country. Tension is especially noticeable in Kawaguchi, Saitama Prefecture, which has a very large Kurdish population. Takahiro Akedo, an associate professor of sociology at Osaka Metropolitan University, says that hate speech online targeting Kurds in Japan has become increasingly visible since the spring of 2023. Now, the issue of foreigners buying real estate. It's not only a policy platform of right-wing parties, but mainstream parties as well. The Democratic Party for the People made a public pledge that it will aim to establish a law to regulate land acquisition by foreigners. Party leader Yuichiro Tamaki said one of the reasons for the soaring prices of apartments and rent is the increase in domestic real estate purchase by wealthy foreigners. However, these politicians forget to add that there is nothing illegal about it, and it is a buyer's market. Foreign investors can buy land in Japan with the same rights as Japanese citizens, and there are no specific visa requirements or restrictions on foreign ownership. Okay, everyone is complaining about over-tourism, and not just the politicians. And it's true, some visitors have done stupid things at shrines, left trash about, and some foreign YouTubers have really made a nuisance of themselves. Tourists have even been blamed for contributing to Japan's rice shortage this year. It's worth remembering, not all foreigners in Japan are tourists, but some right-wing politicians and even everyday Japanese people seem to lump tourists and long-term foreign residents together whenever bad behavior and crimes involving foreigners are mentioned. Police data, however, shows that crimes involving foreign residents had been declining until 2022, with a slight uptick in 2023. The share of foreign nationals among all reported incidents has held steady at around 2% over the past decade. For the past 2 years, tourism has been Japan's strongest growth industry, and the government wants to see 60 million tourists annually by 2030. Last week, representatives of nearly 300 non-governmental organizations, NGOs, held a news conference in Tokyo at which they issued a joint statement criticizing xenophobic comments made by candidates and said foreigners are being made scapegoats for Japan's problems. Meanwhile, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party is trying to take a stance that it's mindful of the problems blamed on foreigners, but ever since the assassination of former nationalist Prime Minister Shinzo Abe 3 years ago, the LDP has gone downhill, and some of its support is being siphoned off by parties like Sanseito. The LDP is now a minority government, one led by Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, who realizes that he must do something to counter the right-wing parties. Ishiba said problems can't be solved by hatred or slander in reference to foreigners who live in Japan. The LDP has pledged to set up a body to address challenges related to foreign residents in Japan. Justice Minister Keisuke Suzuki said an orderly coexistence between Japanese and foreign nationals is essential. He said that foreign nationals who fail to engage only in activities permitted under their resident status may be deported. And he added that permanent residence may be revoked for those foreign nationals who have not been paying health insurance premiums and their residence taxes. The most likely result of the upcoming election is that another minority government will have to be formed depending on how the LDP fares. However, none of the right-wing groups can win enough seats to get their policies enacted into law. While these parties are similar to their counterparts in Europe, their growth will be limited in Japan, which has a single-seat constituency system. That means that one candidate is elected from every electoral district. Further, none of the far-right parties have indicated how to grow the economy, or what to do about the cost of living, healthcare, pensions, and, as we've talked about before, trade tariffs. Whatever the election outcome, they won't be going away. Having made their views known during the campaign, they will depend on their supporters to build momentum. Here are 2 examples of what their supporters had to say. At one of Kamiya's stump speeches, a young woman said, "When I see his speeches, it makes me cry. I'm a huge fan." A 63-year-old self-employed woman who supports the CDP made this very frightening statement. "After Abe was assassinated in 2022, I was really worried about where Japan was heading. I feel uplifted when I hear the national anthem. It's in my blood. If I was told to go on a suicide mission, I would go." Our Japanese colleagues told us that they're shocked at how fast this movement has grown and how little the average voter seems to know about Sanseito's background or the real facts about foreigners living in Japan. These parties probably won't win enough seats to pass laws, but their message is already out there and their supporters aren't going away. So what can we do? Well, start conversations. If you live here in Japan, talk to your Japanese friends and colleagues. Ask them what they think about these parties, these policies, and where things are heading. To be clear, it's not about telling people how to vote. Democracy means choosing freely. But when parties campaign on fear, exclusion, and misinformation, people deserve to know the truth. One conversation won't change an election, but it might change someone's vote, or at least they can fact check what they're being told. Thanks for watching Japan Today Spotlight, and from the Japan Today newsroom here in Tokyo, I'm Jeff Richards. See me next time.